creativity, whatever form that creativity takes, whether we are a writer, a painter, a dancer, a musician, a teacher, a parent, a facilitator, whatever it might be, that creativity in our lives is one of the most important routes toward our psychological growth. And it's one that we don't often recognize. Today, I want to walk you through 5 ways in which our creative practice can accelerate our psychological growth, our personal development, the way that creativity works, the way that creativity enhances our well-being isn't always as obvious as it might seem. And if you're into this kind of thing, make sure to smash that button, hit subscribe. This is exactly what we do here. And you will also find links in my bio to our free Creative Flow co-working sessions, which are a fantastic creative community that I am really, really pleased to be able to lead. But let's jump in then to our first topic, creativity as a mirror. The first way in which our creative practice accelerates our psychological growth is that it can function like a mirror and not an overly polite one. It's not like ChatGPT that just tells us what we want to hear. Because when we sit down to write or paint or design or compose, whatever medium it is, we very quickly encounter ourselves. Not our ideal selves, not our LinkedIn selves, but that slightly chaotic, that avoidant, that distracted, that overthinking, underconfident self that is actually running the show. Creative work brings those resistances to the surface. It shows us our perfectionism. It shows us our limiting scripts, mindsets, and beliefs. It shows us that strange inner part of us that says that you aren't good enough, that this isn't good enough. But here's the key. We can train ourselves to bypass that. That voice in our head that says that we are not good enough, that we are not creative enough, that this is not original enough. That isn't who we truly are. Rather than trying to resist that, rather than trying to push away the voice of the inner critic, we can use our creative practice to almost lure that inner critic out and then remind ourselves that we are not that voice. We are not that inner critic. The work shows you where you are, and the work brings to the surface the parts of you that you can metabolize, process, and work with in more effective ways. The second point is that creativity eases our psychological integration. What do I mean by that? Well, a whole bunch of our psychological work, our psychological development, happens in fragments. You journal about one thing, you read another thing, you're having a conversation with your therapist, your coach, your spiritual director about something else. But they don't always cohere. Creative practice is different. Creative practice demands synthesis. And if you're writing an essay, if you're writing a novel, if you are binding a book, if you are painting a picture or composing a symphony, you have to bring ideas together, feelings together, resonances together. You have to make something out of these various fragments. You are drawing upon your intuition, your technique, and your craft to do so. So creativity then becomes this really interesting laboratory where we can bring all of the parts of our psyche together in one place. In a place where our analytical mind cannot dominate and where our emotional life, that voice of the inner critic, can't just run away completely unchecked. Over time, what you are doing is not just building a body of creative work, you are building an integrated form of yourself. And I'm really curious, where does this show up for you? If you have a creative practice, what does your creative practice teach you about yourself that nothing else really does, drop that in the comments below. And, if you're interested in a more structured way to explore psychological development through your creativity, come along to one of our Creative Flow co-working sessions, workshops. I'll pop the links below so you can have a look at that. But be sure, definitely stay to the end because we still have a lot more to cover here. Our third topic is that creativity develops our tolerance for uncertainty. This is a big one, not simply in our creative practice, but in being functional members of society. As we begin a piece of work, whatever that new creative project is, we don't really know what it is going to become. We have a direction. We've sort of set the coordinates in our sat nav, but we don't yet have the final destination. And I say to a lot of my one-to-one clients, if we have the complete image of our project already at the beginning, we need to push ourselves harder, because part of the creative process is creating something that we can't yet fully imagine. So we begin our creative work in this way. We move in a direction with some sense of the form, some sense of the plan, but the process itself is exploratory. You make a move, you respond to it, you adjust your plans. That's how the creative practice works. What you're training through this, whether you realize it or not, is your ability to stay in that in-between place. You are training your ability to be more comfortable in discomfort. And that's where the real growth happens. The real growth happens in the unresolved moments. Real growth happens in moments of ambiguity that we can learn to just sit with. Real growth happens in taking something from a kernel of a thought to final completion. Creative practice gives us repeated low-stakes opportunities to try that out. Creative practice is a form of learning how to live, learning how to be human. And over time, you become someone who doesn't panic in moments of uncertainty because you have learned how to work with it. A fourth point is that our creativity externalizes our inner world. This might sound obvious, but I want to flip it on its head because of the art of creative practice, we look at things slightly differently. A lot of psychological difficulty that we encounter, those big, heavy feelings or emotions that we can't seem to shake, come from things being internalized, repressed, diffused, and then become impossible to grasp. Sigmund Freud taught us that whatever we push to the back of the cluttered storage room of our mind, what we push into the subconscious, we no longer have conscious control of. And that's a problem because things that we no longer have conscious awareness of and no longer have conscious control of can rear their head when we are least expecting it. Emotions can come out of nowhere. Patterns repeat themselves. Limiting mindsets seem to play out in our lives. Creative work, however, takes the internal and gives it form. Through our creative work, we cannot hide from those parts of ourself and from those parts of our psyche. So whether it is a sentence or a sketch or a structure or a stroke of paint, whatever it is, it takes something that's internal and makes it visible in the world. And once something is visible in the world, your relationship to it changes. You can ask yourself, is this actually true? Is this actually complete? Is this actually who I am as a person? Is this actually who I am as a creator? And there's something else here as well. And this is the part that many of us creatives struggle with. When you externalize your inner world, you create distance from it. When we get to that final stage of completing our creative work, it can feel like that work has been completely part of us and still is part of us. And we can feel so protective of it. We can feel feel fearful about what is going to happen to it when we release it into the world. But a really important shift that we need to talk about is thinking about not the work as that finished product, that book, that painting, whatever it might be, but the work is our relationship that we have developed to those ideas in the process. The final work matters, absolutely. We want to get these ideas out into the world. But where the real work happens, where our craft comes to bear, is in the development of our relationship with those ideas. And by cultivating that relationship with our creative ideas, we are coming into a different relationship with the hidden parts of ourselves. And the fifth point is that creativity builds a very specific type of agency within us, or a specific type of inclination toward action. Not that big, profound, loud type, but that agency, that inclination toward action that enables us to show up repeatedly, bit by bit, day after day, moment after moment. And that is powerful. The ability to do that, the ability to show up day by day, moment by moment, until a project is completed, changes our careers. It changes our relationship. It changes our understanding of time itself. We suddenly feel like we are able to achieve so much more. And once again, our creative practice gives us that lower stakes laboratory for life. All of these things I've been talking about are skills that we need in our day-to-day lives. And all of these things are tools that creativity helps us to cultivate. Up until this point, we've been talking about creativity as something that we do, a practice, a tool, a method. But really, and this is the point of all of the work that I do on this channel and in my live trainings and coaching, really, creativity is a way of living. As we deepen into our creative practices, we begin to approach problems differently. We begin to approach constraints in our lives differently. Our routines, our habits, our environment, these become part of our creative acts of living. This doesn't happen magically all at once overnight. And so many creatives I work with continue to reside in that feast or famine sense of creative practice, which doesn't lead to more sustainable, nourishing psychological frameworks for their life. But as we begin to recognize that the real work of creativity is the relationships that we cultivate to the ideas within us, rather than that finished product that we can feel really good about sharing. That's great stuff. That is where the real change begins to happen. If you want to come deeper into this work, there's a lot more that we are going to explore. So make sure that you have subscribed or follow the links that I'll pop below to one of our co-working sessions, and you can try this out in real time. Remember, drop a note in the comments about what creative project you are working on now and what you have already begun to learn about yourself, your mindsets, your beliefs, those inner scripts, what you have learned about all of that from your creative work. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.